Trinity Buoy Wharf has been this precious pocket of openness.
It's manic, Piccadilly Circus. Apart from that, another day in paradise.
We have utterly commercial in the form of Thames Clippers. And we have fine art, we have music, we have lots of music.
One of the defining things about artists is they're either very rich, in which case they're generally dead, or else they're impecunious and struggling to find spaces to do what they do.
Converted containers came quite early on, and again it was a first for London. It hadn't really been done anywhere else. And it meant that people could afford spaces that they couldn't get anywhere else, and in a position they couldn't find anywhere else.
So this song's called Metal Box, actually.
It's called Metal Box.
Yeah. The whole thing of Trinity Buoy Wharf is very, you know, it's unlike anywhere else in London. It's such an inspiring spot. Privilege to be able to work here, really.
I'm going to use the walls of the wheelhouse as an amplifier and the wood resonating with the frequency of the sound. I cannot think of a better place in London for generating that level of creativity.
That's what I'd call, I suppose, the pedestal. This is actually what I would describe as the plinth. Then the next bit would be this bit, and that goes on top of that. Except, I've got a couple of issues with this. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to remake it. It's not quite right, anyway.
When I first came here, there was a lot more independent artists. You know, it was easy to take a unit on site and be an artist. But Eric especially has been very focused on where he wants to drive Trinity Buoy Wharf, and he's recognised it has to deliver in a cultural sense, in an expressive sense. It has to produce stuff that goes out.
Our latest big project, which we've been doing here, is kind of a houseboat made from cardboard. So, recycling loads of old cardboard into a houseboat. Could it be done? This is what happens when it gets wet. It completely ruins it. It's really sad.
That would be cardboard then?
Yeah, that's why you don't make boats out of cardboard.
It's really nice coming to this school because around you is an amazing place of lots of history. It's also known as Container City, which is because most of the buildings are made out of containers.
And what kind of people work here? People do you think they are?
There are some funny ones, and there are also quite serious ones.
What's happening with the steam engine?
We're building a full-size steam engine. It's going to crash through the front cloth every night. I'm very excited.
The steam train is going to be a challenge because it's got to move under its own steam, and also it's belching fumes and sparks and all that sort of stuff.
For many, many, many years, up until the kind of early 70s, London, the Port of London, was one of the busiest ports in the world, and at one point the busiest port and the most important port in the world. And all the industries around it employed 109,000 people in 1965, the height of its power. That reduced to 9,000 people 5 years later because of these things. Shipping containers killed that completely.
I mean, when the docks moved out, devastated the area for 10 to 15 years, nothing happened. People were paralysed by it.
They called it the London Docklands Development Corporation, and in 1981, when it began, it had to build almost from scratch an entire infrastructure.
In deciding what should happen in those scrappy bits of land around the river, of which Trinity Buoy was one, there was nothing there apart from the lighthouse, but it was obviously in a marvellous place right on the river.
when we talked about it, the idea came up it should be a creative business centre.
So we managed to invite entrepreneurs to suggest what they would do with it, to turn it into an arts centre.
We said we'll keep the whole site as it is, and we will actually generate activity from the ground up.
If you really seriously want something to be maintained for creative people, you have to disconnect it from the general escalating price systems. Which means you have to control the land. We said we should control the land with someone else, and that someone else has to have a long-term interest. That long-term interest was protected by the Trinity Buoy Wharf Trust.
The important thing is that the lease is held by the trust in perpetuity, virtually. So somebody can't just come along and bid a lot of money for it and it'll all disappear.
%25 of all income goes to the trust. The trust then spends that in support of the arts and creativity, basically in East London. So far, the trust have received something in the order of 10 times the amount that we might have paid if it had been sold for housing back in '97.
The agreement was that a proportion of what is taken in rents from the development, from all the people who are there, is paid to the trust, and the trust then uses that money for the benefit of the local area, for students, for artists.
All of that without any public money.
So all you got was the land?
Yep.
You didn't get anything else?
Nothing.
Trinity Buoy Wharf was owned by Trinity House, and they made buoys here. They used to make buoys here to go down the end of the River Thames, at the mouth of the River Thames, to guide ships up to the Port of London.
Power, industry, art, manufacture, all very important to this area. Important shipbuilding. Part of what we want to do as Trinity Buoy is to keep that memory just about alive.
She's so beautiful, and this is really the last one, really. I mean, they built 12 of these. To actually operate one of these engines is a privilege, really. There aren't any of these running, really. Only at show. You go to a show, you might be very lucky to see one.
I often think that wouldn't it be cool if you could take two bikes, attach them together, and one person steers and the other person can just relax. You know, it's more like a car, it's really stable. We will have proper beds, and on our dashboard we'll hopefully have like all the GPS, all the battery control systems. I want to have a megaphone up here.
Whoa, it's a smooth roller.
Oh, it's a really smooth roller. Oh, I don't need to pedal now.
Very manoeuvrable.
It's actually not slow, is it?
No.
What do you think it is to be a creative person who makes things?
It's a bit of a disease, I think. Got this kind of urge to do this thing, which actually isn't necessarily sort of the best route in life. It's a bit of a kind of curse.
This is the perpetual story of trying to find a studio in London.
It's terrible, isn't it?
It's terrible. It's terrible.
What's it like for an artist? What does it
mean? It's so precarious.
How many times have you moved in your career?
I cannot remember.
Give me an estimate.
About 20.
You've moved 20 times?
About 20 times, yeah.
We just wouldn't be able to kind of do this in any part of London, other part of London, certainly not the east, you know, where I live and stuff. We wouldn't be able to afford it. You know, I used to pay like kind of crazy money in Shoreditch just for like a really bad room for a studio. I spent 13 years in the basement before and it drove me crazy.
Trinity Buoy Wharf made the space and let us do something that would otherwise be unachievable. The project wouldn't have been able to happen if we'd had to pay the rent for space at that scale. For me, being able to use Trinity Buoy Wharf was that piece of oxygen, and it's a chance, and it was precious, and you make sure you don't waste that. It was sort of the breakthrough project for the studio.
And now suddenly, it feels like Canary Wharf and what all of that is starting to sort of move its way round. For us at Trinity Art Studios, this is translated into sales of our art, commissioning of works. Then we are talking beyond that of other things that they'd like to do. Yeah. They would like to have a gallery on site.
There is the model of the replacement to our lovely pier. The area is now switched almost 100% away from employment to residential, which brings with it the number of people who need to cross the river is growing exponentially.
We then take now.
Model looks great, but when you scale it up, you end up with an object that looks like a model. It doesn't look like an object. The real version of it has got this nice big thick rim and the rivets on top. So it's just, if we'd have just copied this, as nice as it is, it would just look like a flat disc. But you've got to look a bit deeper and find what it actually is.
You take the exhaust off? What? Can you take the exhaust off? Yeah. When I saw this particular engine, for me it was like having a third son. I had the same excitement, truly.
We're opening in 3 weeks' time, the main show. They see places like Trinity Buoy Wharf, which has got this, it's got it. You know, it's got that thing that they want, that intangible thing. This has got, and that hasn't. So it's very much, and how can you buy that?
It's an amplification system which uses the door as an amplifier. So the vibrations are picked up by the wood itself.
Wow.
It's dreaming the voyages. The wheelhouse as it sits isn't going anywhere without a forklift truck. But the wheelhouse in terms of story and art and imagination has so much to give, I think, still.
This evening we will be, we're going to travel to the local forest and the wilds of Epping, where we're going to set up camp and sleep.
When society homogenises too much, we are weaker. Something that's very important is just to nurture the idiosyncratic people in our society.
Being able to mess around is a luxury in London. Normally everything you do has to be justifiable. Look at that. It's made from rubbish, and yet it's a feasible motorhome that you can travel long distances in, and that is quite important. That's to be resolved.
Not really, actually, because when I started these...
What does this mean for the arts and the arts community at Trinity Buoy Wharf to have such an influx of new people? I'd like us all to raise a glass to the unity of this community. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Cheers.
It's is so exciting, just so amazing to have a new pier here.
The important thing is to try and make what has been achieved here, make it repeatable.
If we're going to claim to be a vibrant and important and global city, then you need more than enough spaces like this.
I just know that we've got something very special here, and hardly anybody's been there to see it.
There could be a lot of opportunity to learn from Trinity Buoy and get on with it and do it.
It's about facilitating, it's about letting things happen and letting them happen in a slightly controlled way, but in a way that is unpredictable and positive and exciting.